Okay, so welcome back. Part 2. I will not be that hard on you this time. This time it'll be mostly me blathering on and on and on. So, point number 5. Reasons for overscheduling. Could start with greed. I know a guy who teaches school, sells real estate, and delivers pizzas. I'm not joking. You know, it's like, you don't even have time to spend any money. And it's just money, 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 money. Don't even have time to, sleep, let alone spend money, right? It's there, Another thing, which is not necessarily related to greed, is what we might call the workaholic syndrome. I have to work, way back when, in the good old days, when I was still a parish priest in Hamilton and didn't know the joy of church administration, there was an incident that happened in Brantford, I believe, somewhere around here, I believe it was Brantford, where these kids were playing hockey in a hockey league, and somebody did something, and one of the fathers jumped down out of the stands and went and beat up the coach. Okay? And they interviewed on the radio. I remember the interview. They interviewed Walter Gretzky. You guys know Walter Gretzky? Yeah. Really good guy. Anyway, they interviewed Walter Gretzky, and they said, well, what's this all about? And he said, the sad fact is that some parents look at the kid, and they don't see a kid who likes playing hockey. They see a big fat paycheck. They're in it because they want that kid to get into the NHL, and they're going to make big money, and et cetera, et cetera. So greed, that's one reason. Another reason, it may sound counterintuitive, but there's the issue of people having an inferiority complex. It's almost like fear, right? Well, other families do this, other kids do this, and if any of you grew up in an immigrant reality, you could talk to my mother when she was in high school, and then, they'd have a dance during Lent, and she wouldn't even ask her father for permission to go to the dance during Lent, because that would be bad enough, right? So you have all these kinds of things, whether it's the food you're going to eat, whether, the kind of celebration. Going out on a date, my wife will tell you, if she wanted to go out, and the guy's name was like Fred or George, no. But, if his name was like Taras or, Yuri, well, okay, So you get this kind of stuff going on all the time, right? I don't want my kids left out. You get this kind of thing happening. So rather than cut down the time to what's reasonable, you add stuff in, and like a sausage, and just stuff it. Related to that is the issue of social pressure. We talked about kids not wanting to be left out. Well, what about the adults? Well, John and Mary, they got the 72-inch flat screen TV. And, Fred and Ethel, they got the Mercedes and this and that. So either I'm going to, be working more to get this, or I'm going to be doing this or that or whatever. So there's social pressure. There's a lack of forethought or planning. So again, this is really, these are all self-inflicted, but this one is really self-inflicted. I have to tell you my story. I was enjoying the absolute ethereal joy of working in church administration in Winnipeg. You know how it is. If you're a parish priest, you got to bury people, but also you get baptisms and you get weddings and you get happy things happening. Usually, if you're in church administration, nobody calls and says, "Oh, Father, our priest is just the greatest, and you know what? Life here in the parish is just so good. We have extra money, and we'd like to send you some." No, it's always, the priest is this, and there's, we don't have money, and, you this and that, right? So I'm working there, And I'm not complaining because I liked I liked the work. The job was horrible, but the work, was really good. So I was probably there 2 years, and I would be putting in probably on average 10, 11-hour days, work days, 5.5 days a week, like that. Okay, in the office. I'm not talking about going out serving in churches or anything. I'm just talking about in the office. And I just couldn't figure out why I was always so over, never had time. And it hit me that about 2 years in, I never put time into my day to speak on the phone. But yet a lot of time during the day, people are calling you on the phone. So, and it struck me because I would be wanting to get off the phone, and I thought, well, no, but this is what I got to do that. But I hadn't worked time into my day just to spend talking on the phone. So little things like that can really make you crazy. Take it from experience. Another reason that we have these reasons for overscheduling, another reason we overschedule is the need to feel useful or productive. A lot of us have trouble, quote unquote, doing nothing. What are the social pressures? Well, we're supposed to do this, we're supposed to do that, we're supposed to be busy, because if you're busy, that means someone needs you, and you are useful, and we need to be needed, right? Well, there's a really nice phrase you hear sometimes. Somebody might say, well, we are human beings, not human doings. Okay, you're a human being, not a human doing. In other words, you are not defined by what it is you do. You are defined by what you are. Okay, and you can go back to all that theological stuff we talked about earlier, the image of God, etc. Okay, but this is really, really important that people do get caught up. There are guys that I'm told, they dress up in these long black gowns and wear funny hats and these medallions on their chests, and they get really caught up in that, and that's their identity and all. It does happen. And if it happens that way, then the guy's got a problem. But it's the same with anything. Whether, whatever you do, you are not what you do in a very elemental sense, right? You're a child of God, you're loved by God, you're made in the image of God, you're made for communion with God, etc. We see our lives in function of God. Okay? So this need to feel useful or productive, this need to always be doing something. Well, if we've got that problem, we've got to get over that too. I don't know if you know people like this. Again, I know people like this. I know people who will get themselves elected to the executive of their parish and their diocese and their and the local this organization and the local that organization and the Loyal Order of Water Buffalo and whoever, and they're on the executives of like 6 or 7 different things. They can't fulfill the obligations of 3, but yet that's sort of their identity, So we have to be very careful of that. And then the last comes back again to this, We overschedule ultimately because of our priorities and our vision of life. Okay, our priorities and our vision of life. Anybody, and I've heard this phrase so many times, I literally want to throw up when I hear it. Anybody ever hear somebody say, "That's on my bucket list"? This bucket list? I mean, I want to just take the bucket and throw up in it. Because what are you saying? What are you saying when you say, "I've got a bucket list"? You're saying that my life will not be complete until I walk on a tightrope across Grand Canyon. Okay, so you walk across the tightrope to the Grand Canyon. Big deal. I mean, honestly, you trek up Mount Kilimanjaro. Nothing wrong with it. But ultimately, big deal. You're still grave dust, right? Okay? So that whole thing, that I want to bite off everything I can chew. I want to experience life to the fullest. Right? Ultimately, you just say big deal, because even if God doesn't exist in all the postmodernists are right, it's still what you want to do and I don't care, right? So why bother, you know? But for us who do have this vision of life having a purpose and a goal, right? Well, then if we are not ordering our life in terms of the purpose and goal, yeah, it could go either way. You could have craziness due to overscheduling because I want to have this experience and that experience and this experience and that experience. Or it could just be, I'm going to sit on my couch and watch my TV and eat chips. You know, so it's really important for us to try to see the reason behind. So if we're overscheduling, what's happening? Now, having said that, we understand that life any of you who've gone to Orthodox funerals have listened to the canon, specifically to the 6th ode of the canon sung at the funeral, Beholding the Sea of Life. And it's very beautiful. Very beautiful. Go home and read the funeral service. I'm serious. It's a really, really good exercise if you want to get this eschatological vision. Read the funeral service, okay? It talks about beholding the sea of life, which is turbulent. And it's throwing us here and there, right? And that's what life is like. It's the sea of life. It's up and down, right? Sometimes it's more, if you want to say, violent, you know? Sometimes it's calmer. But that's the way life is. And so if you schedule yourself for this, when you get down here, you're probably going to be going crazy, twiddling your thumbs and saying, ah. And if you schedule yourself down here, when you get up here, you're going to be going crazy, saying, oh, what do I do? You can't deal with it. And so this is what we want to be balanced. We want to be in the middle there. We want to be not too high, not too low, okay? And so when we look at this, this sea of life, the waves, okay, we want to be not at the crest and not at the trough. We want to be somewhere in the middle as a normal position, right? Because those crests are going to come. So you have to be able to rise up to meet them, and you'll have crazy times. Your wife goes into labor at 8 in the morning, and you have to drive downtown to Mount Sinai Hospital in rush hour, and she's really, really, really ready to give birth. Okay, well, that's going to be stress, but that's normal. You can't do anything about it, so it's okay. And then you are sitting there on a Thursday afternoon in your office, and the people that were supposed to come visit you to talk to you at 2 o'clock, well, they got caught in a snowstorm, and they can't come to talk to you. So maybe it's okay just to relax, okay? So that's where you want to be. You don't want to be at the crest. You don't want to be at the trough. You want to be right there in the middle so that, you balance it out. And so we come to the reality that we all need downtime, okay? We all need downtime. People need contemplation, okay? People need contemplation. People need recreation. And that word, you just think about it, recreation, okay? Recreation. Constructive rest, as opposed to mindless entertainment. One of the most insidious things for everyone nowadays is the plethora of various and sundry electronic devices. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. I really can't overemphasize what I feel to be the need to shelter the young people from the electronic devices. And again, we're coming back into something that we talked about in the overscheduling, about this inferiority complex. We're afraid that, our kids are not going to have the opportunities, whatever. This isn't to say that you don't teach a kid how to use a computer. But when you have 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds who are like this the whole time, okay, when I walk into a bedroom upstairs in a house where we just baptized the kid, and all the 7, 8, 10, 12, 14-year-olds are sitting around there in presumably a child's bedroom with a TV, with what do you call it, computer game, and the kid is there shooting on the screen, boom, 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 boom. A guy who's already down on the ground and all this, you say, what are you doing? It's insanity. This whole thing with the computers, and you have to tell the kids those games that they have, whether it's like this, like that. Well, you have to tell the adults now. They are not there for entertainment. The people that put those games out there, don't put them out there because they're such good people that they want you to really feel good. And they want you to grow spiritually and mentally and into a good person. And they're there to make money. And as our very good friend C.S. Lewis once famously noted, a person who is addicted has very little sales resistance. Okay? So the things really do, they really do like rewire your brain. If you know anything about addictions basically rewire your brain. Okay? And people, especially the kids, can be easily... You've seen those commercials on TV probably with the marijuana, how a teen smokes a marijuana, it can, rewire the brain. Well, yeah. Okay, so it's very, very important to just try to stay away from that stuff and have creative rest. Okay, have creative, constructive type of rest. The prayer and worship. Please.
How do you deal with if you bring your kid over to someone else's place and they're watching it, and they let their kids play iPads and all that stuff, the technology? How do you control that, and how do you?
50 years ago, 60 years ago, in a similar context, somebody might have asked, well, I take my kid over to the neighbor, they have a television, we don't have a television. And it's just sort of things keep going farther and farther in that direction. Well, ultimately, you have to decide how much is okay and how much is not okay. Because it really does depend. If the people next door are responsible about it, okay, but there are games that... You ever ask yourself this question? You see, like, I don't watch much on TV other than sports, okay? But you'll see the commercials, okay? And they will have these, I guess, because of the target audience, they'll have these games, right? These assassin something or, yeah, whatever it is, okay? And it will say, the other one about the cars, where they drive the cars. Okay. And they say, appropriate for teenagers. And you want to ask the question, what is it that makes it appropriate for teenagers? What is it that makes it appropriate for teenagers? Again, so depending on what, I'm not saying all technology is bad, but the games are very possibly addictive. The kids' brains aren't formed, and I joke with the kids when I see them with that. I said, what's happening here? That thing, it rewires your brain. So you think you're playing a game, and it's rewiring your brain. And then somebody next year in Japan is going to press a button, and all you guys with rewired brains, you're going to go and attack Ottawa. And they laugh, but it's only half, it's only half a laugh. So that's really important, that the constructive rest is constructive rest, because that isn't rest. It makes, if you ever see them afterwards, like that, okay? What? Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, if you ever see, well, again, but that's the whole addictive thing. You take the bottle away from the alcoholic, you hate his guts, right? And, the prayer and worship, okay, very important. Everybody prays. Have any of you ever heard somebody say something like this? Usually a man. Not always, but usually. Oh, Father, I'm not against the church, but you know what? on Sunday morning, I go out into the woods, I take a walk, I pick my mushrooms, and I commune with God, and that's where I have my church. Have you ever heard anybody say something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The funny thing is, even those people that don't go to church understand that you need that. There has to be some type of a spiritual engagement. Okay? Other-centered activities, doing charitable works, etc. Also very important. Do you know what the word... And no Greeks are allowed to respond.
Okay.
No Greeks, okay? The word ecstatic. You all know the word ecstatic. What does the word come from? Do you know what it means etymologically, the meaning, the derivation?
Ecstasy.
But the word, where does it come from? What does it derive from? Ek is, okay, the Greeks are loud now. Out of, and static is?
Standing.
Yeah, so you come out of yourself, basically. You come out of from where you are, right? And so this idea of doing charitable works, of being engaged with other people, and that might be just sitting around having a cup of coffee with a friend of yours who's thinking about whether to become Orthodox or not, And then one thing that we've lost, one thing that we've really lost, and it would be really good to regain it, is the understanding, the idea, the practice of the Sabbath. Does anybody know anyone who's a practicing Jew? Okay, the practicing Jew, what happens on Friday night? You don't do anything. You don't do anything. You are allowed to walk, what is it, like 2,000 paces? You remember in the gospel it says on Easter evening, it says it was Sabbath day's journey? Yeah, I think it's something like 2,000 paces you're allowed to walk, because more than that is work. Do you know what a Shabbat Goy is? Anybody know you ever heard the word Shabbat Goy?
Is it like someone who do the work for you?
Yeah, a Goy is a non-Jew, right? A Gentile. And the Shabbat Goy is the Gentile who will go and whatever is work. For example, you can't turn on the lights because that's work. So they will turn on the lights for you. You can't turn on the oven because that's work. So, a lot of this gets really legalistic. But the point is that they take it seriously. There was a special on 20 years ago for sure. It was either PBS or TBO, I can't remember which one. And they showed like a family, modern North American, I think New York family who was Jewish. And it was just such a nice thing, And you'd go to shul, and you would have your meal. By the way, I don't know if it's not the same with the Greeks. For us, the people who bless the Easter baskets, okay, like the Ukrainians and Romanians and Russians, and one of the reasons we bless the Easter basket? Because you're not supposed to cook. So on Easter, you come home from church, and that's what you're going to eat that day, so nobody needs to cook. Okay? So the idea that you just relax, the day is dedicated to God, day is dedicated to family, they have special songs they sing, all this kind of stuff, special meals, okay? It's a very, very beautiful thing. I'm old enough to remember when they were having discussions about opening stores on Sunday. I'm old enough that where I grew up, I think even when I was born, it might have been still that they didn't have like football games on a Sunday. Right? Okay? So we've lost all of that. We've lost all of that. And that's another thing. I mean, when's the downtime? Do you guys remember it would have been the late 80s, early 90s, when there was talk about opening up on Sundays? And if you just think about it, the economics of it. Okay, I've got a store. I've got to pay for my heating and my lighting and my staffing for 6 days a week. Now, everybody's going to open on Sunday. So if I don't open on Sunday, they're going to get business that might be mine. So I got to open on Sunday. So now I increase my overhead by 16%. But yet the people that come into my store, nobody's getting a 60% raise in disposable income. So where's that money going? You know, it's just even economically it doesn't make sense, right? So, yeah, that whole idea of having the day off, the Sabbath. I don't care. Maybe the Muslims will take over and they'll say no selling on Friday. You know, like, what do you do? What do you do? Because, you know, we're just, it's almost like this society shoots itself in the foot, right? So, we have our reasons for overscheduling. We have the need for downtime. We need that. So let's get to the proper ordering of family life. Okay. Family life, ideally, should have the following elements. There should be prayer. Okay? There should be prayer. There should be common meals. And by the way, the sociological research is very clear. The two identifiers, indicators rather, of the greatest chance of success for children are, A, are they involved in some type of religious community? Do they have a faith? Do they go to church, etc.? And B, do they have common meals at home with their parents, with their family? Those two indicators are by far the best indicators, if they have the one and they have the other, that those children will be successful in life. Okay? So I read a really neat article about that. This woman was from New York, and she said, in New York, her kids go to a public school there, and she says, because, I'm involved, I go to all the PTA meetings, right? And so we have these, it's an affluent area, so they have all these high-powered people coming in and giving talks to the parents about raising kids and all. And over again, you hear these high-powered sociologists saying, having meals together and having, some type of religious, religious, not just the identity, but practice, right? And she says, as far as the religious end of it, nobody gets it at all. So they just pass on to having meals together, and then we have a discussion, and everybody agrees that, well, it's not necessarily the meals, it's just having quality time together. And then we pat ourselves on the back and we move on, to more important things. But it's having some real religious engagement and having the meals together with the family. So those are very important. The worship, of course. Worship has to be a part of anybody's life if you're normal. Okay, if you want to be a normal, sane human being, you will worship. Okay? Chores. There was a show on CBC Ideas last spring, I believe, called Neuron Therapy. And it was a psychologist who deals with what we would call troubled kids, right? And I would invite you to listen to the show because it's really interesting. He was doing research on the effects of like video games and technology on the minds of young people, and he got so scared that he went home and he unplugged their TV and he turned it off. And they said, the interviewer said, well, how did you tell the kids? He said, well, I went out and bought 5 chickens because they live out in the country, right? And the kids came home from school, and I said, I have some bad news for you. Our television is broke, and because we're way out here in the boondocks, I can't get anybody to come and fix it. Okay, he said, bad news and good news. So that's a bad news. I said, what's the good news? He said, I have 5 chickens. And she said, and what was their response? They said, where are the chickens? So basically, what he's discovered is that, they had kids from a school, difficult children. They basically set up a school which is like on a farm, north of Oshawa, actually, up by Peterborough. And the kids have chores, and it's a very regulated life. And they have classes, but they also have their farm chores and all. he says within 6 months, they're all fine. There's nothing, like they're all normal, quote unquote. It's a really good thing to listen to. Really good thing to listen to. Neuron therapy. And then, of course, for the children, you have the schoolwork. Okay, that's important. Okay. Recreation. I'm one who really does believe sports, music, dancing, art, it's all important. The kids, as much as possible, should have a chance. Sometimes that will be within their school environment. Sometimes that might be outside of the school environment. Different lessons for this or that. But, all the kids have gifts. So it's just a question of trying to find where the gifts are. And sometimes it'll be good. I went out for football in grade 9. Well, I wasn't a big guy then like I am now. Okay? It wasn't, But grade 10 I went out for cross country and track, and that worked out better, right? So you try this, you try that. I was never any good at art. But I was in the choir, right? Things like that. So you give the kids the opportunity to develop their talents in that way. The identification of priorities is gigantic. The importance of scheduling and routine is gigantic. The importance of being flexible with the scheduling is gigantic. I mean, anybody who has children, things can go sideways very quickly, right? Spending time together is gigantic. There's another really good article by Dr. Rossi. I'll email it to you. Silent something, silent spaces. He talks about how he would when he would drive his son here or there, and his son used to listen to what I call the wango, 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 that kind of music, right? And so he said, I was driving along, and I would just, I would be nervous, just the music does that to you, right? And then I thought, it's my car. What am I getting nervous? He said, I made a deal with my son. I said, okay, listen, you have the choice. On the way out or on the way back, you can listen to your music, and then whenever you're not, that half of the drive, I'm going to listen to my music. Okay, good. And so the kid, of course, being a 15-year-old, says, way out, way back, way out, right? He's going to get it first, right? So wangle, 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 all the way there. Goes to pick him up, gets in the car, they're driving, and he doesn't put on the radio. Dad, why don't you put on the radio? No, I like it like this. And just sit there quietly driving. Even just to sit there quietly with your kid, whether in the car or wherever, gigantic. Just gigantic. Where do you get quiet nowadays? I mean, and God forgive me, I don't want to say anything bad, but you can't even get quiet in a Greek church anymore because they're always playing tapes. You know what I mean? It's like there's no service going on, but there's a tape, which can be very beautiful. But you know what? Sometimes you just need... I know people that will come to my church because they won't come for services, but they'll come after services because they just want quiet. So that's really important. That Gabor Mate that I mentioned earlier, who did the book about stress, he also did a book with a child psychologist named Gordon Neufeld, which is called Hold On to Your Kids. And I don't know, you're nodding, so you've read it? You've read it? Yeah. Very good book. And he talks about one of the great dangers that they identify is what they call peer orientation. Peer orientation. That the kids grow up without reference to some type of, if you want to put it, higher authority, the parents, the grandparents, etc., right? And it's their peers that are basically giving them their meaning and their leadership and all this kind of stuff. And it's basically the blind leading the blind. And you hear these horrible, horrible stories about kids getting bullied and this and that, and sometimes end up being killed, etc. Okay? He talks about having what he calls gathering the kids. And that might be something like what Dr. Rossi was doing with just being there with the kid in the car quietly and like that. Having time together. and it's really, really important, because the peer orientation it's very bad. It's very bad. I mean, if you can imagine yourself. You're 14 years old. The people you listen to were all 14 years old. None of you has been, farther than that mile at the end of the village and that mile at the end of the village. And that's where you're getting all of your information from, and you're not listening to anybody else. Now, does that sound like that's a recipe for great success? I believe that there was a book called The Lord of the Flies that, okay. So that's really important. We have to strive to consciously order our lives and schedules to reflect that which is most important, to avoid being reactive to that which is passing or of the moment. So remember what's most important, to see the difference. And that's what we can see. That's what the parent can see. I've been around long enough to know that men's midriff shirts are not going to come back. And if they do, nobody should wear them. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. He doesn't know what I'm talking about. Thank God. Okay? That which is passing, it's passing. Don't even bother. And by the way, that's the way we have to react to a lot of stuff. That's the way we have to react to a lot of stuff. Just don't get bent out of shape about it. Because it's here, it's gone. Yeah. We especially, though, have to avoid being manipulated. Because, the entire advertising business is about manipulation. There's a guy named Rod Dreher, who I think is chair of the Templeton Foundation right now. He used to write for Dallas Morning News, and Orthodox guy from the States, really good. I think he's on Orthodox Christian Network. He has a blog. Anyway, he was, in his earlier days, he told a story about how when his kid was 6 or 7 or 8 years of age, they were in a restaurant, and they had the booths, right? And so he said, and our kid is homeschooled, so, the homeschool kids are not afraid to talk to adults. So we're sitting there in this booth, and he, sort of stands up on the seat and turns around, and there's 4 girls from the local university sitting there. And he says, "Hi." And they said, "Hi. What's your name? What's your name?" Right? He says, "What do you do?" They said, "Oh, we study at the university." "Oh, what do you study?" So we study marketing. You know what marketing is? He says, "Yeah, that's when you try to get me to buy stuff that I don't need." So, yeah, avoid being manipulated. Okay, because that's the manipulation. That's a part of this too. Okay, so at this point, before we get to the final part, time management and Orthodox perspective. We're not going to read it, but I want to direct your attention to it and tell you that you should read it because it's applicable to everybody, and the principles apply in family life just as truly as they apply in personal life, okay? The last point, family life as the front line in the battle for our souls. Okay, we talk about spiritual warfare, right? Some people get really excited, they get the spiritual warfare. Yeah, okay, we're on the front lines. Well, you are. You're on the front lines when you wake up in the morning and you go into the kitchen and you say to your wife, "What, the coffee's not ready?" Okay? Well, yeah, maybe that's just your opportunity to not make the devil happy. Some would say, more importantly, not make your wife unhappy, and accept the moment, the situation, as a gift of God, and react in a proper way. The family life is our first primary opportunity to live the gospel. And I mean, we all know, you guys know that old song, "You Always Hurt the One You Love"? If you have a chance, go on YouTube and look up the Spike Jones version of "You Always Hurt the One." Anybody know who Spike Jones is? Oh man, I'm not talking about, you know Spike Jones? The old musician with all the funny instruments, right? No, Spike Jones, this is 1930s, 1940s stuff. Oh, you have to do it. It's absolutely hilarious. Spike Jones, you always hurt the one you love. Okay? He was a novelty band in the 30s and 40s. It's fabulous musicians and really funny. But anyway, that's the reality. I mean, who are we closest to? Who do you let see your worst side? Whether they want to or not. Okay? That's the people in your family. That's just the way it is. Okay? The reality is we try to always show our best side to others, to the strangers, to the boss, to the checkout girl, to the gas station attendant, whatever. And I don't know if you've ever seen this. If you go to a store or something. Now Christmas time, oh yeah, you can do your own experiment. You go into like Toys R Us or something. And there'll be somebody there yelling at a kid. Oh yes, thank you, hello. Yeah. And you get that. And we have to remember, if we can treat the people in our families the way we treat strangers, that might be a really good thing. I'm talking about the outward way that we speak, that we're respectful, that we might smile, that we might be courteous, okay? The family life is an opportunity to learn virtue. I mean, what's the Christian life? The Christian life is virtue, right? Okay? Does the family give us the opportunity to learn patience? Really, it gives my wife a lot of opportunity to learn patience. Charity, altruism, generosity or sharing. Now, if you have brothers or sisters, yes. If you don't have brothers or sisters, I don't know what we're going to do with you. Okay? Self-sacrifice. Piety. I mean, do you guys, anybody here see Star Wars? Remember that point where they say, the Force is strong in his family? Remember that? Yeah. Well, you tend to see that also with faith and piety, that it does tend to run in families. But if it isn't in your family, that's not a big deal because it can always start, right? It's got to start somewhere, and it did start somewhere in our own families, if we're blessed to have families like that, right? Okay? Honesty. And again, this is another one. If you have one kid, the old Bill Cosby line. If you have one kid, you come home, the lamp's broken, everybody knows who did it. You have a couple of kids. He did it. She did it. No, but he pushed me. Okay? So honesty and humility. Okay? So you just think of that: patience, charity, altruism, generosity, sharing, self-sacrifice, piety, honesty, humility. Anybody know one person who really lived up to all of those virtues? Can you think of somebody who's really lived up?
Christ.
Yeah. Okay, so it's all being Christ-like. It's all being Christ-like. That's what it's about. And this is the one place where we sort of just differ a little bit from Christ. It's the opportunity to ask and receive forgiveness, okay? Because we have to forgive, okay? And if you live in a family or anywhere, in a parish, in a society, without forgiveness, imagine. What would life be without forgiveness? Look in the Middle East. There's your answer. Okay? And all this happens in the back and forth of daily life. Okay? So this isn't some big pie-in-the-sky, highfalutin, we're going to do 6 Akathists and, 4 Molevins, and we're going to fast from everything except dried peas, for a week. This is not yelling at your wife when the coffee's cold. Okay? This is going down to pull the towels out of the dryer when it's 11 at night and you've been on your feet since 7 in the morning. Okay? This is all that basic stuff. This is not talking back to your parents. This is not saying stupid stuff to your children when they're out of sorts. Okay? all of those opportunities that you have all the time. This is not telling my mother who is in the early throes of dementia, no, you didn't know that guy in Greece. Because by the time you left Greece, he wasn't even born for 10 years. Okay? It's just, you have to take what it is in the given moment, in the given instance, and try to apply the gospel to it. Okay? So you talk about a balanced family life, that's it. Apply the gospel in the moment, in the circumstances, with the people that are there. And don't think, I'm going to do some big highfalutin thing. I'm going to give a talk in Hamilton at All Saints of North America. Oh, that doesn't matter. Jesus is going to say, oh, remember that day that, you snapped at your wife? Why'd you do that? What do you get out of it? So that's the thing. Ultimately, there is no formula, okay? There's no formula. If you came here thinking that Big Wise Father Bohdan is going to tell you what you need to do so that you don't go crazy, I'm sorry. Can't do this. There's no formula. Because everybody's life, every family, every individual is unique with unique characteristics, strengths, weaknesses, and possibilities. Okay, so we have to take responsibility for the life God gave us. Okay? And as long as, and to the extent that the structure of our family life reflects our Christian teachings, values, and vision, okay, reflects our Christian teachings, the gospel, our values, and vision, it will be good and beautiful and successful. You could have everything totally different, which is all good and beautiful and successful. The art is in the application of the universal Christian practices and principles to the unique hypostasis, the unique thing that is each individual family. And just, in closing, you have the ideas that we should keep in mind. You have what we heard yesterday in the Gospel with Martha and Mary. That Gospel we read always for the Theotokian feasts, where, Jesus says, Mary has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken from her. Okay? And that he says in the Gospel, seek first the kingdom of God, and all these other things will be given to you. But you seek first the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is the first thing. That's the most important thing, and that we would try to apply those teachings in our family life. And that's the point. So I'm done. Thank you. If there's questions.
I recently read in the Bible. I read something that I'm trying to understand. Everybody heard that wife should submit to her husband, and children have to listen to their parents. There was one line that was new to me. It says that the fathers do not, and I'm trying to translate from my language, maybe not. The fathers should not
provoke his children.
Provoke
exactly.
their children to make them miserable.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little more, because I am have very vague idea on that.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's really important. Of course, we read everything in context, and we want to make sure that we read all the words we need to read. So when it says, wives, submit to your husbands, it doesn't put a period there. It says, as to the Lord. And then husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church. And those are very important qualifiers, okay? Because it's not a question of submission and domination and anything else, okay? So that's just point number one. And that's the same with the children. The children are not mine. The children are a gift of God given to me to raise them, hopefully, to love God, right? To be given back to Him, okay? So, the fathers, do not provoke your children. So, do you know what it means to provoke? Yeah. Well, that's not a good thing to do. You know, you want to, you don't want to be, you know, in one sense, have you looked at those movie trailers? you see them okay. Like again, I don't watch much TV. Don't get the wrong idea about that. But they have these movie trailers that you'll see, and it's just half a second, and it's like that, right? Okay? And what they're trying to do is provoke in you a reaction, right? So why would I not want to provoke my children? Well, I wouldn't want to provoke my son to be mad at me, right? If I say, go out and shovel the snow, he might get mad at me anyway. But it's something that needs to be done, and that might be his chore to do it, right? So that's a totally different thing. But why would how to put it? What good could come of provoking my child? You know what I mean? What good could come of it? You know? So I don't know if that's a terribly good answer, but that would be my question to it, you know? It just seems to me, like I mentioned earlier at the beginning, just some Christian common sense. You know, don't provoke them, because I'm sure you've heard stories about fathers who were always saying, oh, you're no good. Oh, you know, the kid comes home with an 80, says, oh, it should be a 90. Comes home with a 90, says, oh, why isn't it a 95? You know, comes home with a 95. Oh, so-and-so got a 99. You know, look, I ran a 100 meters in 11 seconds. Oh, what, you should do 10 seconds. Do you know anybody like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've known people like that. It's horrible. So I think that, you know, St. Paul saying don't provoke your children, I think that's pretty reasonable advice. Yeah, because it doesn't go anywhere.
Thank you.
Okay. Please.
I don't know where I read it, but I'm quite sure that I read an Orthodox author, it might be one of the fathers, who said something to the effect of don't play with your children. And it strikes me as being unusual to hear such a thing. Is it possible to be too playful with your young children and to laugh too much with your children to the point that they may disrespect you?
Well, everything is possible, right? No, I'm not being facetious. Everything is possible. Just like some person may be very cold, some person may be very warm, you know? I would be really interested in hearing if somebody said not to play with your children, because, you know, of course, a lot of this sometimes depends on context, but that just sounds kind of odd to me, okay? So I would be interested in seeing if somebody actually read that. But you have the image of the Father in the Old Testament, and you have the image of the Father in the New Testament. And, you know, it's a very warm image. It's a very warm image, okay? So when, you know, sometimes people get worried. Oh, I know people who will say, oh, I could never have children. No, I wouldn't be a good mother. I wouldn't be a good father. And they get all, you know. But you know what? People have children all the time. And generally, it takes care of itself. Okay? We're sort of hardwired for that. Okay? And so if you're a normal human being with, you know, a half-decent upbringing, chances are you're going to be a half-decent mother or father. Okay? And how much to play with a child, that's going to depend. That's going to depend. It's going to depend on the parent. It's going to depend on the child. And again, there's no formulas. So is it possible to be too much? Well, if I'm spending, as the father, if I'm spending 18 hours a day sitting there, goo, goo, gaga, there's something wrong with me. Okay? There's something wrong with me. But one child is going to need more attention, one child is going to need less attention, and you just do what you need to do. They're different. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Go into your Orthodox study Bible. Go into the concordance. Just look up Father, and then start reading about the Father just in the Psalms. Okay. Just read about the Father in the Psalms. Go to Psalm 103. 102 rather. 102. That first antiphon of the liturgy. Okay? Very beautiful images. Okay? Anything else? Please.
I was gonna elaborate on this this concept of provoking children.
Mm-hmm.
I know some parents who are telling their daughters constantly how beautiful they are, and or the kids just how great they are, and how boosting their ego every chance they get. Can that also be taken as provoking, like in another way?
I wouldn't call it provoking. I'd call it really dangerous, because no, there's another book that I read last year, which is really interesting, called, well, first one was called Generation Me, and then the next one by the same author was called The Narcissism Epidemic. This is like, at that time when she wrote it, was about 40 years old, sociology professor from San Diego State University, from California, a 40-year-old woman who's a university professor from California, telling you everything your yaya or your baba would tell you about how you should live your life. So you really got to listen to that. And this was definitely part of the problem, that there's, and you see it in the Fathers. I mean, you just look at Ladder of Divine Ascent, where he talks about unholy self-esteem. There's a healthy self-esteem. Okay? But there's an unholy self-esteem. And all of this cult of self-esteem in the schools, it's, I really don't see that. It's like one person once said, it used to be in the old days, people would get self-esteem by actually doing something. And now, I don't know how it is now, thank God my kids are out of the schools. If you have kids in schools, God bless you. I know when my kids were in schools, I mean, they would get certificates for doing nothing. I need another piece of paper, So I think though, if it's healthy at home, it's fine. The kids are not stupid. They can smell a rat a mile away. If it's false, they know it's false. They'll joke about it themselves. And so you can just, give a little snicker with them about it and be done with it, But the self-esteem, when it comes from the parents now, oh, you're the best, oh, the cult of the child, they have their own liturgical language. It's like,
I have the most amazing children. If I hear that one more time, I think I'm going to burst.
Yeah. And you know what? But you know what I would say to something like that? I'm at that point in my life now where I dress weird and I don't care. Okay? I would, if somebody said something like that, my response would be, yeah, every child is a gift of God. And just try to punch that home. It's a gift of God. Like, you couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. Nobody could do that. Who could sequence this genome to get this? No, but that's, and just keep coming down on that they're from God. It's all from God. It's of God. And usually if they don't like God, they'll shut up real quick and get away from you. But if there's anything in their heart, that might open a door for them. Because on the one hand, it's absolutely true. Every child is absolutely amazing. All of you are absolutely amazing, right? But our value is not intrinsic. I'm not valuable because I'm valuable. If I have any value at all, it's only value imputed to me by the fact that I happen to be in relationship to this God who's really the only good thing anywhere. Because even Jesus says, only God is good, right? So, yeah. Anything else, please?
So earlier on you mentioned about video games and cell phones and all of these gadgets that kids get. Do you have any recommendation what's the appropriate age when we should introduce them to cell phones, and how much time they should be spending playing video games or watching DVDs?
As far as a cell phone goes, does a child need a cell phone? Okay. When the kid is 16 years of age, driving a car, they might need a cell phone. If there are other particular reasons they might need a cell phone before that, well, you'd have to think about it, But do they need it? Well, I think most of us here grew up very well without cell phones. Okay, what do you need the cell phone for? I wouldn't have a cell phone if my wife didn't make me have one. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. You know, and I'm when I leave parish ministry, that's it. I'm not. I won't have one. You know, the games are a different story because again, it's not to say it's all bad. They have to learn the computers, but you know, you just do basic. How do you say basic? Not damage control. Diligence, okay? So that you make sure that the computer is in an open area in the house, okay? You never put a computer or a cell phone, no electronic device like that, no television in the kid's bedroom, ever, 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 no matter how old they are, okay? Just basic things like that, and if you look after that, it'll tend to be okay. And of course, all of this is predicated on just having lines of communication open, you know, so that they can actually talk to you and you can talk to them. And it's really good if the kids have other adults, like it might be an aunt or an uncle or somebody who they can talk to, people who are, you know, trustworthy and mature, okay? Yeah, you just heard, I think, on the news coming down here, I heard about the Toronto police captured a guy in a cyber porn ring. He was trolling, and his, like, what was it, 10-year-old daughter or something on the computer? And it was the father found out about it, and then they did sort of a bait and switch, and they caught the guy. So thank God for that. But, I mean, a 10-year-old girl on a computer getting recruited by a child porn guy? Well, that kid shouldn't be on the computer anyway, like that. Okay? Because there are all kinds, and, you know, the problem is, you know, it's all like the security line at the airport. In 1999, you used to be able to basically go out. I remember when I was going to my first marathon in Atlanta, and our plane, had a stop in Pittsburgh, so we got off the plane, and right there at the gate, my parents had come there, and we said, hello, how you doing? And 10 minutes later, we got back on the plane and flew to Atlanta. Well, they can't do that now. Why? Because some guys flew planes into a building in 2001 in New York. So now you've got all this big security apparatus. So now it takes you an hour and a half you have to be at the airport, or 2 hours for an international flight. So you have all this time you have to add to your life because of some crazy people who flew planes into buildings, right? And it's the same with the computers, with the kids. There's all kinds of opportunities, all kinds of programs and things to protect your kids from what they might see on the TV and what they might see on the computer, etc. But you have to spend the time to make it secure. So it's just like the lines, security lines at the airport. You know, if you want the security, you have to take the time.
This is connected to the previous question. I was wondering what you'd recommend in terms of how to provide a solid basis for your children from the beginning, whether it's from conversations or habits in the home, to kind of, I guess I would say, soften the blow in adolescence when wanting to take part in those things that their friends are doing, and those conversations are going to keep coming up, that they can have they can be prepared for that conversation and how you answer to them that will, the reasons why they might not partake in certain video games or have certain electronics in the home. What would you recommend that you do to prepare?
Yeah, you always give the kids good things. Okay? You always give the kids good things. You talk about good things. You don't scare them, the world is a horrible place and all this kind of stuff. But if they're in a halfway normal family and you've got, you know, aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents and this kind of stuff, and you can have games and you can... Do kids play board games anymore? My son Yuri, who we left in Winnipeg, I mean, he would get together with his buddies. You know, these are 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids, right? And they would get a pizza, some pop, and play Risk. That was a big night. And it was a good thing. It's good. No, you know, you don't need to be a debauched and drunk and everything else in order to have a good time. And by the way, that's not a good time anyway. Right? So it's like, cut to the chase. There's all this good stuff, right? And then if you want to talk, if, you know, they get to the age where they're going to have, you know, hear about this and this, and you can talk about it, that's the big thing. Just as long as you can talk about it. They say, okay, well, do you know anybody who's gotten drunk? Did they like it? By the way, any of the girls you know, they ever have any problems with boys or this or that? Because it's all out there, okay? And that's why it's really important, you know, to, you know, if you can't homeschool and you can't send them to a Christian school, it's not to say that they're lost, but whether it's the Catholic board or public board, they're the same, right? And you have to be really, you need, let's put it this way, if the relationship hasn't been put on solid ground by then, well, I don't know what's going to happen. But if it is a solid relationship, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. You know, because you got to be able to talk.
You mentioned, sorry, sure, quick.
School system a couple of times. Can you maybe just elaborate on the importance of perhaps homeschooling or going to a private Christian school versus public school?
Okay, and so nobody misunderstands. I'm not trashing the entire public school system. I'm not trashing the entire Catholic school system. But what I am saying is this. Unless you have a teacher who has some type of even vestigial moral, spiritual compass, or moral compass, unless you have a principal who really is interested in what is right and what is good and what is true and what is beautiful, okay, you can get literally anything. And it doesn't matter if it's a public school or a Catholic school, because functionally they end up putting out the same product. Okay? My oldest son went to Sherwood High School. He came out fine. He's a subdeacon in Christ the Savior Church in Ottawa, and you know, and everything's fine. He could do that. My daughter was of a different temperament. We ended up sending her to Hamilton District Christian High School, and my youngest son there as well, for two different reasons. For her, it was a social thing. It was all this peer orientation stuff. And she had gone to a Catholic grade school, by the way. Okay? With Yuri, it was a whole different thing, because he was not very, he's really good socially, but Yuri went to this, they used to have this Ukrainian Catholic school here on Barton, Holy Spirit. It was really good, because they were on the old calendar, so like they'd come to church, you know, for the feast days, and then we'd take them back. My son Yuri got the I guess they call it the Catholicism Award or whatever it is for the kid that knew the Catholic faith best in the whole, you know, thing. Anyway, because he was really into that kind of stuff, you know, into the church. He knew it, and he still is, right? So when they went up there, I mean, those people, for them, you know, and they weren't, you know, really aggressive about it, but going to church was cool. Going to church was good. Talking about Jesus Christ was okay. Oh, and you believe that, and you know, and he would talk about orthodoxy, and like. And we were treated very well there. Like, they really respected us there. I have to say that was a gigantic thing for us. And for Nina for one reason, and for Yuri for another reason. Okay? Whereas in the public school, I think both of them had a good chance of being lost for one reason or the other. I have to tell you a funny story about Nina, because we lived up on the East Mountain, right? And she was in 7th grade at the time. And my wife says, oh, you have to go get her. She's got a lesson or something. So at that time, all the kids were wearing these jackets, with the Adidas jackets with the 3 stripes down the sleeve, like this, okay? So I said, well, where is she? She went over to her friend's house over on such and such street. So I'm driving to see if I can, catch her. And I look and I see this kid walking along, in one of these jackets. And I thought it's Nina. So I pull over and it's not her, So then I go, now somebody coming in, not her. And they were all, they're all wearing the same thing, right? I want to be unique. I want to be different. So I'm going to wear the same jacket that everybody in school is wearing, because if I don't, I'm going to stick out. That's what you get. So I think it really depends. I know that it depends on the teacher and the principal in each particular instance, okay? But you have to remember the fundamental understanding in a public school and in a Catholic school, other than perhaps in religion class, is there is no God. Everything is done as if God does not exist, okay? And it was, I think, G.K. Chesterton said that education is implication. In other words, it's not what you tell people that is the most important thing that they're going to learn. It's all the, the suppositions and all of the unspoken assumptions that are behind what you say. So if the unspoken assumption is there is no God, and the kid goes to class for 12 years of their life, and the unspoken assumption is there is no God, and you know what? It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. But I just, literally in 2 days, my council president tells me that one of our kids from our parish who went away to university, came back, from university, and told his parents, you guys belong to a cult. Orthodox Church is a cult. Okay? Kid who goes through 12 years of church school. Okay? And then, the very next day, we got an old subdeacon who can't come to church anymore. I take him communion a couple of times a month. He had a really good friends of his, and they have their child, who's like his godchild, right? And I said, oh, how's, so-and-so doing? He said, oh, I keep praying that he'll come to the church. He says, every time I mention it, he says, oh, you and your cult. And it's a high school kid. I said, where do you get that? From school. The teachers tell him. You know the old story? It was on the internet. I don't know if it's true or if it's apocryphal. But I'd read it years and years and years ago. Really good story. Girl goes away to university, and she's got one of these aggressive, anti-Christian, anti-religious professors. And it's a psychology class or whatever. And so the professor comes in and says, who here's a Christian? Raise your hand. Who's a Christian? So, a bunch of people raise their hands. Yeah, you guys really believe you're really Christians? Yeah, okay. You. It makes this girl stand up. You, okay, tell me. Why are you a Christian? Well, I go to church. Well, why do you go to church? Well, my parents used to take me to church and just being really, really aggressive. So, do you believe? Well, yeah, I believe. Well, why do you believe? Well, we read the Bible, and she'd go on and on and on, really aggressive. Why are you? And he says, so ultimately you're telling me, because your parents were Christians, that's why you're a Christian. She says, well, if you want to put it that way, I guess, you could say that. He says, so tell me then, what would you be if your parents were idiots? And she said, I don't know, probably somebody like you. But that's what they get. That's what they get, So, but that's why how do you fight that? You fight that with goodness. Because where does that lead? Do you want to live in a world where there's no forgiveness? Okay? Do you want to live in a world where there is no meaning? Okay? And by the way, even those people can't live in a world with no meaning. They can't, because it doesn't hold together. They're very inconsistent. Okay? But if the kids know goodness, and this is what really scares me about the churches now. This is what really scares me. A kid goes to school, to church school for 12 years. Okay, comes, serves in the altar, right? Is there like black on tar. Goes away to university within 1 year, everything's gone. Okay? How does that happen? Well, if it's because of the fact that they haven't found goodness and truth and beauty, because for whatever reason, somebody's up there wailing away in some language I don't understand. Okay? I don't know, I gotta go, they tell me I gotta go here and do this and go here and do this and then make me good, and I don't understand what's going on, whatever it is, okay, whatever reason. Because they find that people are fighting with one another. Ooh, you can imagine a drive home in the car, right? Oh, that stupid priest, what's he talking about? He said, that fasting, we don't need to do that. God knows what's going on, right? Like, God knows, literally, God knows what's going on. But if that kid has the experience of goodness, Christui, like in Greek, they say Christui, Panagitsa, right? They have these enduring terms for Christ, for the Mother of God, right? When you have that kind of relationship, well, you're going to stay Orthodox when you're like him, okay? Because that's the thing, that's why you can't be spreading the poison. You can't look at the church as an opportunity to be putting down others or anything else. It has to be a warm community, a community of love, where people feel love. They'll never run away. Okay, they'll never run away. So this is the real important thing, that the churches be close communities where there is goodness, where there is love, where there's truth, where there's beauty, and we can't talk about the other stuff. We can't talk about the other stuff. You talk about it if you need to, but in the proper context. You don't teach kids about evil. You teach kids only about the good. Okay, please?
Do you feel the Muslims are a threat to Christianity here, or will be in the future?
I don't want to get into that because I'm not a prophet. But I think that how to put it nicely, if the Christians aren't the greatest threat to Christianity, then we won't have anything to worry about from the Muslims. Listen, all we could do is maintain the faith. That's all we can do. And whether we die a peaceful death at 90 with our children by our side, or whether we get our heads cut off, doesn't matter. But we are faithful. You're faithful to Christ. I'm a Christian, I'm faithful to Christ, and that's it. Because he is good, and he's true, and he's beautiful. And if you want to do that, well, you're going to have to give account before him, just like I am. Yeah. Anything else? Please.
Just a couple of little ideas for celebrating name days with children.
Oh, well, first of all, you celebrate them. First of all, you celebrate them. You can, if you want to make a cake or have a nice meal or something, that's really good. Going out, what we would do, we'd go out to a restaurant or something. Just make a little big deal of it. Yeah. It doesn't mean, yeah. In the old country, and if you want to really be good, you can invite, if you really want to be a hero, if they're younger kids, you invite their friends over for a party. Take them for mini golf. Anything really. Yeah.
And additionally, second, when you're talking about helping as a family to look outside your family, to look at others, and to be charitably directed, do you have ideas for young children doing that?
The one real danger is never to, how do you put it? You never want to use the opportunity to do good deeds to cultivate pride. Okay, so it always has to be done humbly, right? So if you have, for example, family members, cousins, aunts, uncles, whatever, okay, who might not be so well off, okay? If you have maybe older relatives or neighbors who need the grass cut or something, that can be the thing. And you just tell the kids, no, we do this for Jesus Christ's sake. We do this for Jesus Christ's sake. We don't do it because we're good. Someday we may need help and they'll help us. Like Father John, my buddy at the camp, he always tells a story about how he grew up in Los Angeles, right? And Father John Hardy was a good Irish Catholic boy, right? And he went to a parochial school, and he said the nuns always used to tell us, whenever you see an ambulance going by or something, you always make your sign of the cross, and you make a prayer, Lord, whoever they're ministering to, let them be healthy, etc. And he said, and then it happened to me when he got out of, because he got out of university, he was in an automobile accident. Well, he ended up going to St. Vladimir Seminary and becoming an Orthodox priest, but he was in an automobile accident, and a car hit him, and he was already Orthodox at that point. It's actually before he went to seminary. And the priest from the Russian Orthodox Church in exile, the Rokor parish there in Los Angeles, it was near there, and the Matushka actually came out and saw him, and so she called the priest immediately, and the priest came and was with him in the ambulance and all this kind of, so, and everything came out okay. But he said, and he always tells the kids, he says, you see, all those years, anytime an ambulance would go by or a fire truck, I'd pray, that they'd be safe, etc. And when it came my time to be in the accident, what? The priest is right there. I have all of that, and everything came out okay. So,
very good point.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Father, on behalf of the parish, please accept our thanks for traveling across the megacity of Toronto to be with us. Please accept this icon of our patron saints, the saints of North America, so that when you pray in front of it, you can pray for us. It's sort of a plan. And you just received a copy of the Acts of St. Cuthbert, so please enjoy that as well. In relation to your talk, we have a number of these icon cards that are showing the patron saints of the internet, Saint John Chrysostom and Saint Theophan the Recluse, and they have on them the prayers, the use of the internet. So if we're going to give those, Jovan will have some of those. And also, it's very good to put an icon either on or right next to the screen whenever you have, whether television or internet, to have an icon nearby. Yeah. And please accept our sincere thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Brothers and sisters, please, as you leave, take a look around to see if there's any trash on the floor, or any glasses or silverware, and please return those to the kitchen. We appreciate you coming very much. And if you could also give your help to reset the tables and chairs, we'd appreciate that as well. Don't forget, if you have some ideas for future workshops for the Orthodox Institute on the Family for next year, let me know, and we will take those under consideration. Now I invite you to stand, and we'll say a prayer. Thou, my Christ, are the sum and fullness of all that is good. Fill my soul with joy and gladness, and save me, for thou alone art all merciful. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, now and ever, and unto ages of ages. Amen. Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. God is with us through his grace and love for mankind, always, now and ever, and unto ages of ages. Amen. Amen. Have a good night.